Welcome to this next episode of Said Differently, the show about B2B messaging and go-to-market storytelling with your host, Jennifer Sikora, and brought to you by Troop. Let's get on with today's episode.
And I'm super excited to have Evan Boyer here with us today. He's the principal at Leaders PR, has a very extensive, long history in PR. And we are going to be really focused today on this topic of earned media and why it has outsized value in this era of GEO, AEO, whatever acronym you want to use, but really about, AI now playing a increasingly dominant role in search and people's research and understanding and learning about new products and solutions. So, Evan, why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself a bit to everybody?
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. Again, Evan Boyer, founder and CEO of Leaders PR, founded in just August of this year. So just 3 months ago, as of the time of this recording. So very new into solo business ownership and entrepreneurship, but not new into public relations and communications. Have been working in agencies across the Southeast, mostly in B2B for the better part of 15 years. So a number of large organizations that everybody's heard of, like Chase Bank and SunTrust and Red Hat, Anheuser-Busch, a number of others. But then a lot of smaller organizations. And what part of Leaders PR's role is to help challenger brands and startups and founders find their voice and be able to capture some of the attention and narrative that's available to them in earned media.
That's great, Evan. Well, your client and your experience has really run the gamut then in terms of, ICP. Just before we jump into our planned questions, is there any kind of common, like really top of mind issues across your clients right now? Is there stuff that is a common thread?
Yeah. Well, like you said, I've been in a lot of different industries. B2B is kind of where my focus and my heart is. I've also done a good amount of B2C as well. I would say today, where my business is, and most of my clients are in that B2B space, I think there's a real need for them to have a structure and a process to developing their narrative and their key messaging and become great storytellers. So often you see an organization, especially like a founder-led, a small organization, who they've got somebody at the helm who's extremely bright, well-educated, knows the ins and outs of their business and their industry. But you put them in a situation where they've got to be able to communicate that succinctly, and they really struggle. And so that's part of kind of the mission of Leaders PR, is to be able to help them build that in a way where they don't have to struggle.
I love this. I'm really excited about this. Little known fact is I actually have a degree in journalism. I had dreams of becoming a journalist. So I've actually spent a couple years at the beginning of my career on that side of things. And so I have an appreciation for the journalist mindset. It is that profession has rapidly changed over the last 10 years, continues to change quite significantly. And like you said, Evan, like that founder's story often has to be told in a different way to get earned media. Very like your core narrative, your core story that you want to tell the market about your company and about your offering. That's a different way to execute that story to journalists and to get earned media than it is in a sales conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And this is a conversation that I have quite a bit. And it's a difficult one to have with especially people who are so accomplished and knowledgeable in their own industry, is to tell them that it can't be about you, right?
Yeah.
You have to be talking about issues and trends and things that are happening in your business that maybe pertain to you in some way. But it's not a sales pitch. You're not going in there and saying, we do this and we're the best
Right.
company for this problem or solution.
Absolutely. Journalists don't care about your features. I'm sorry, they don't.
No, no. I just had this conversation with the founder relatively recently, where I was trying to explain this, and literally the response was, well, where do we talk about our features?
That's
Because we've got a lot of really good ones. and I'm excited to tell the world about them. I said, well, that's what the marketing team is for. But when it comes to earned media and speaking with journalists, it's a little bit of a different approach. And so getting folks to understand that is a journey sometimes.
Absolutely. Well, let's get into it. I have our planned questions here, and this is a good segue. So, when you're engaging with a client, then for the first 90 days, let's pick that as a random, maybe not so random measure. The
Yeah.
first quarter that you're engaged with them, that narrative is so crucial. And as we were just talking about, like you have your go-to-market story, you being the client in your case, or your client, they have their go-to-market story, but now they bring you in. And you have to look at what they've been telling to the market from a sales motion. And now you have to figure out how to deal with that from a earned media mindset, right? So how do you set them up for success? What are the things you're doing and how do you keep GEO, AEO in the back of your mind through all of that?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really complex and detailed question.
I'm sure.
Um, I think, like I said earlier, I think there's a structure and a process to all of this. And so many times, I'll come in behind a PR firm or, maybe I'm brand new for a founder or an organization. And, the mechanism for PR is just like they throw you the ball. They say, go score us some media coverage and some placements. But I think the reality is that it doesn't really work like that. That you need to have. So that first 90 days that you're talking about, I think there are a lot of things that happen that are what anybody would expect. We get the background documents, we parse them, we're going through kind of a little bit of a discovery, right? And to understand what their go-to-market motion is.
Yeah.
And then to be able to shift that into, okay, what's, again, bigger picture, what are some issues and trends in the space that we can attach ourselves to? And, what do we say that's not necessarily about us, but just about like where we might be able to fit in the market. So certainly understanding audience is a part of that.
Yeah.
Having some insight, context, and then being able to provide credentials and credibility to validate kind of your stance and opinion. But that's a process that um, you know I've worked on and refined over time with a number of different clients. It could be 30 days, it could be 60 days,
Mhm.
or maybe a little bit longer. But that process gives you a really solid narrative foundation that you can then build from. And then there are a couple steps, after that through the first 90 days that are helpful as well.
How do you make sure the narrative that you use to try to go out and accomplish earned media doesn't drift too far away from the core narrative they're using in their go-to-market sales motion? How do you keep that connectivity?
Yeah. One of the things that I really like to do in some of my PR programs is set up basically like a media quality scorecard, we'll call it. And in the scorecard, you can assign different values for were we able to hit key messages as one point? And then if you have, say, you have three key messages or things that are aligned to your brand narrative, how frequently in our media coverage were we able to hit those? And then you can also look at it from a competitor standpoint as well. If they have a similar ICP, similar goals to you, how easily and how often are they able to hit those kind of key metric or key message points?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's being able to kind of score that keeps you honest in terms of being able to stay real close to the narrative that you developed originally.
That's great. I love that. I mean, of course, at Troop, we're all about trying to figure out how to measure this as much as we can. Um, Getting the sort of executives often are the spokespeople for the company. They're the ones that are the media facing, sources. Um, excuse me. How do you make sure they don't spin out and start to
Mhm.
freelance the story, go rogue, maybe not in an intentionally negative way, but
Sure. Well, I think that kind of brings me to step two in the process and that first 90-day period, give or take. So we talked about building the narrative framework, and I think step two is training on the delivery. So a lot of people will call this media training. I think it has broader applicability. When you think about putting an executive, in a room where they're pitching or selling, also in front of media, also on stage. but really getting deep with them on the practice of delivering that message, because you can sit there and you can read all the source documents and the nice neat narrative materials, but if you can't deliver it, it really isn't worth anything. So I think that that's often overlooked part of the process in our industry,
Yeah.
and media training will be kind of tacked on as oh hey, we have some extra budget, or we've got a TV, a broadcast tour that we'd like to do, and now is a good time to do media training. But
Yes.
I actually think that it needs to start at the beginning. So after you build that narrative, now let's rehearse and practice and get comfortable with how are we going to deliver this message.
Yeah. And, thinking about all the different ways and avenues to get earned media, it just doesn't look like it did 10 years ago, even, right? I would love your thoughts on this, Evan, but, even thinking through what is going to start to build that foundation for strong, not just SEO, but AEO, GEO, traditional news outlets are also, they're certainly not the only place people are getting their content for third party trusted content. There's influencers out there that are even within their category, right? Honing in on like who are the people building content. They might not be traditional journalists, right? So, podcasters, videocasters, things like that. How do you have to build that whole scheme out for them, right? So,
Yeah, and again, I think you've led me beautifully right into step three of my process. We talked about narrative building, we've talked
yeah.
about delivery training, and then the third part is really setting a plan or a roadmap for where you want to be or where you want to go or who you want to be when you grow up, basically. And I think so many agencies and so many practitioners get lost in the X's and O's of where's the next online outlet that we're going to get a quote in, or where's the next place that we can place a byline. And it just becomes, you get a little bit stuck in that hamster wheel, right? Whereas if you have an end goal or a vision in mind, you can almost reverse engineer that and say,
Oh,
okay, if I'm this person, if I'm this leader in this industry, what does that look like? Am I speaking? Am I engaging with influencers? Am I getting earned media coverage, or am I participating in podcasts, or is it all of the above, or what does the combination look like? And then
right.
you can kind of work that back to, okay, what are here are the first few things that we need to do. Creating content is likely one of those things, just even for your own website. But you mentioned GEO
Mhm.
and AEO, and I think that is now a huge part of, if you want to be a leader at the end of the day, you're going to need to be able to crack GEO strategy. And so much of that has to do with earned media nowadays, but it's completely agree with your point. It's definitely a new world versus what it used to be.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like earned media is having a big comeback moment. I don't know if
Mhm.
you felt like even 5 years ago, people were sort of like, do I really need a PR agency? But now it's because things are getting redefined again. It's like the snow globe got shaken up again, said differently, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we're kind of coming back to that and saying, okay, well, people are like they're trusting third party content more than they are sometimes your own generated content. And so it, like you said, it has outsized value right now.
Yeah, yeah, I think it makes total sense, and I think that now is really a good time to be in public relations. I think, to your point, probably a lot more than it was 5 years ago, when there were a lot of doubters and naysayers about like the future of the profession. But I think it's bright at the moment that we're having this conversation, and I think it's probably more ingrained or becoming more ingrained with integrated marketing plans than it has been in the last 5 or maybe even 10 or 15 years. And I think it makes sense. Like, let's not forget, AI is programmed by humans, right? And
Mhm.
humans trust third party sources
Yeah.
more than they do advertisements. And I think that's pretty widely held and pretty widely understood. And it's a driver of awareness and it's a driver of trust. So if you're a business who's looking to to grow and to gain more market share, you got to have it.
Totally. I also really love what you said about working backwards from a goal, like a bit ago. I think that is really important. Like you can't just hire a PR agency for PR's sake. I mean, you can, but
You shouldn't.
you shouldn't. What are you expecting to get out of it, right? So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, it really is true. There are, plenty of people and founders and even large organizations who say, well, we want to see our name in bright lights,
Mhm.
and let's get a PR agency in with us to do that. And they don't really have, I mean, every company knows that they want to grow and gain more market share, but I think there's a lot to be said for, kind of what's your brand personality. How are you going to show up in the market at the end of the day? And if you don't have a clear picture of what that is, starting out, then it can be really easy to get lost. And then also to not achieve your goal of being the leader in your industry, just by kind of muddling your way through it.
Yeah, there are so many goals I can think of that earned media can help support. Is it helping to educate the market about something new? Is it looking to, show and tell success stories from customers to help move people along through the sales cycle? Is it about targeting and making progress with a new persona or market segment or geography, right, that you're trying to penetrate? Raise your profile for M&A or for fundraising.
Mhm.
Other, I'm sure you have other goals that you.
Yeah, I mean, another one that comes to mind is being able to bounce back from any reputational issues. If you
Ooh,
build that strong brand and you're able to have, trust and credibility in the marketplace, if and when something bad happens, it's much easier for you to get back on the horse, so to speak, than, oh my God, there's this huge fire that's going to derail us for months and months or years or be totally catastrophic.
right. Yeah, if you were just at a Coldplay concert or something. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah,
um,
definitely that. I would say too, shortening sales cycles.
yeah.
And there's some data on this that I've seen recently. There's an agency called Dentsu that did a B2B earned study, and one of the results therein was that building brand trust can help shorten B2B sales cycles by up to 16 weeks. So, especially for companies who are selling, enterprise goods or enterprise solutions, that sales cycle is not short, and being able to shorten it by 16 weeks, so roughly 4 months, or more than a whole quarter, that's huge if you're
Absolutely.
if you're able to do that. So I really like that one statistic from Dentsu as well.
That's great. I agree. I think that's a great one, and certainly kind of rolling into our final segment of this episode is honing in on the GEO AEO aspect of this. Is you know everybody wants to figure out to crack that code, right? How do we get mentioned? If I go into ChatGPT or Gemini and I ask it for like, what are some top solutions I should be looking at for XYZ, right? These tools are helping people shortlist, or if you've encountered a vendor and you want to understand a bit more about them or understand how they compare to a competitor of that vendor, you use these tools to do that. So, but these tools rely on content um, heavily from earned media, and I think you have some data around that that's
Yeah, I
compelling.
would recommend. So, one thing that's really been a great help to me over the last several months is Muckrak's generative pulse report. And I would recommend that to anybody if you haven't seen it. I think it's on Muckrak's site and you can go download it. But some of the data from the study that they did just proves out, I think, the importance of earned media. And one of the statistics therein, 49% of links cited by AI are journalism.
Wow.
So one out of every two. And I think it just underscores the point that if you're not focused on building your reputation and your brand through earned media, you're missing out on half the pie.
That's a huge amount.
Yeah.
One,
It's massive.
one out of two. And I'm assuming journalism is the bucket that Muckrack uses, and but that's kind of like traditional news media sites, or do we?
So it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting if you look at the report, it's cut up into, you know, 8 or 9 or 10 different slices. And one of those is owned media, and one of those is paid media.
Mhm.
And journalism is not, in this case, is not entirely synonymous with earned media. There are other slices of the
Of
pie that
earned.
are earned,
Okay.
that are not journalism. So I'm looking at it here on my other screen very briefly. You know, government and NGO content, corporate blogs, and content aggregators and encyclopedic content. In that survey, anyway, those are all qualifying as earned media.
Wow. So that's I mean, given that, that's, yeah. And so traditional news media is a big piece of it. And so, what are some tips you're giving companies to help achieve that? Like, what is landing that these answer engines are grabbing?
Yeah, a couple things, and this could be like another very detailed conversation, right? But having a
Yeah.
variety of content, so that's not just from your site, it's not just getting in listicles that are earned, it's also publishing, bylines, having your executives cited with, with quotes.
Yeah.
I think video is a component of it, even. So making sure there's some variety in the content, I think that's pretty important. And then I think another thing that it's always kind of baffled me that companies are willing to stick their heads in the sand and not do competitive analyses
Mm.
versus what their competitors are doing and what they're getting. If you're plugging in a pretty simple prompt into a answer engine and it's spitting out a bunch of your competitors' information, I'd look very closely at what their strategy is. And it's not hard to decipher that. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are just, and this has been, I think, one of the issues with PR over the course of many years is that hasn't historically been a very metrics focused discipline. And we just, we'll count up the unique visitors per month and we'll pay no attention to what anybody else around us is
How
doing.
many impressions did we get? Yeah, that's right. But
Yeah,
uh,
just I can't begin to express how much I think that metric has set our profession back
yeah,
because it doesn't mean anything.
no.
No business person cares about that.
No, that's right. I think it's really interesting how you talk about the different ways of landing in these answer engines. Certainly, the one thing I learned in hiring an AEO consultant more recently for the studio was that answer engines really like to be spoon-fed. They like the data and the content to be highly structured, and uh, uh, so that's another consideration too, is like how do you do that from an earned media standpoint? That's a little more tricky, but
Yeah.
because the journalists don't necessarily structure it in the way that answer engines consume it, but they do rank those sources quite high. They weight them high, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've been saying to clients recently, and I don't think this is anything new necessarily, but show me your data,
Mm.
as much of it as you can share. And I even pulled a report for a client yesterday. I had ChatGPT help me with the search, and it's very striking how much of the aggregated or consolidated report are data points, numbers, and percentages. And if you can be the company or the organization or the person who provides that, I think your opportunities to be, cited by journalists who are very interested in that, and then answer engines skyrockets.
Wow. That's great. Any kind of closing comments that you have, Evan, for folks on this topic or
Man, I think we could probably go a lot longer than just the few minutes on this. There's so much to unpack, but I think it's a really exciting time to be in the profession. I think PR is going to be now and into the foreseeable future are really important and critical part of any company's integrated marketing strategy. Having that earned media and having people around you who are good storytellers,
Yeah.
whether that's a consultant or an agency that you bring in, or even people in your C-suite. I think having that skill and that knack is going to be unbelievably important, especially as AI starts to ramp up and do a lot more of the lifting. There's still got to be a human aspect to it.
Oh, totally. And I mean, at Troop, of course, we're here to try to use our solution to help companies really figure out what is their most effective story to the market. And then once you've really, of course, that never ends, right? You're always looking to
That's right.
refresh. Like the story is not set in stone for the next 2 years. If it is, then, you probably should take a look at it again. But that becomes the basis for strong story on the earned media side, right? So you have to get your sort of core go to market story really well situated and in a great place, and then use that, like you said, Evan, you translate that as a PR consultant to help them figure out how to make that happen on the earned media side.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad we had this conversation. I know this is a big topic for everyone right now, and we're going into the next year. Of course, by us making these comments, this dates the episode if somebody listens to it later.
Yeah.
But they're setting budgets for next year in PR. I would definitely recommend you need to make sure you're keeping some investment there.
Yeah, it's got to be a line item for 2026. There's no doubt.
Yeah, great. Evan, thank you so much.
Thanks, Jennifer. Great to see you.